may seem almost unbelievable, but we have truly reached the 100th episode of our journey toward proper volleyball, and this is the moment to pause for a while, look back, and recall everything we have seen, tried, and hopefully understood along the way. And since there has been quite a lot, we will begin today with setting.
We started right from the beginning. In the first 2 episodes, children simply got a feel for the ball, then pushed it downward, caught it in a basket, and tossed it again. We also reminded them of the small but important triangle between the thumb and index finger and explained why these 2 fingers do most of the work during contact. Along with that came the lowered wrists with thumbs pointing down, the so-called prayer.
Then came the actual overhead set, first against the wall, later in various positions so the hands could learn to work properly without shortcuts. We also added a basketball. Why? So that the fingers and thumbs would learn to push downward. Then we moved on to setting forward and finally at an angle.
We call this phase simply the basic stage, both for setting and other skills. We are around 10 years of age and in our series still at the very beginning, in the first and second episodes. It is the moment when we are not yet building floors, but carefully laying the foundations. And it is precisely here that the foundation of setting begins to emerge from simple exercises, the foundation we gradually and properly developed over time.
In episode 9, we demonstrated a simple but important principle. When the fingers are the only allowed contact with the ball, they immediately become an excellent tool for individual and pair games, including the so-called red mini volleyball. Why? Because fingers alone are not enough. The player must also get under the ball at the right time and in the correct position. And this is where the legs begin to work. And to be honest, the mind starts to join in as well.
In episode 30, we moved on to the serious craft of the setter. His technique differs somewhat from that of other players, and therefore requires special attention and a great deal of repetition. Without repetition, it simply does not work. Although the setter is the heart of the offense, he must first have control of his hands. From the beginning, we use a basketball. It strengthens the fingers and wrists and teaches the thumbs to press downward. And why is this so important? Because the thumbs and index fingers provide the decisive impulse to the ball. Without proper technique, even the best tactics are just good intentions. When we later moved to the volleyball, we emphasized another key point. Contact must be above the head, and the ball may briefly rest in the fingers. Partly for control, partly for deception. Because what kind of setter would reveal his intentions too early instead of hiding them?
Episode 31 focused on the setter's footwork. Even with beginners, we said that it is not enough for the legs to be fast. They must also be smart. And for a setter, this applies twice as much. His main task is not only to reach the ball, but to get to the right place in time so he can set with composure. Only then does all discussion about technique truly make sense.
The most common stance is with the right foot forward, and that is quite logical. But to turn it into the only correct rule, that would be too academic for volleyball. The game itself demands flexibility and sometimes even improvisation. That is why we must prepare setters not only for ideal situations, but also for moments when they arrive at the last second and set under pressure. World-class setters are a good example. Sometimes they take off from the right foot, other times from the left. The most common situation is still movement from the net toward the ball with rotation around the right foot. However, this is not absolute. Volleyball is not calligraphy, it is a living, dynamic game.
A setter is expected to do something quite demanding, to constantly mislead the opponent's defense. In episode 32, we therefore focused on teaching the setter's hands to do something different from what the body suggests. That is why we include drills from unstable positions where the player cannot rely on ground support and must depend mainly on the hands and wrists. And what if there is no time for footwork at all? Then comes the moment when the setter must be able to set with their back to the net, and that is true craftsmanship. At other times, it is more effective to set facing the net. We simulate game situations. Sometimes the goal is to prevent the ball from going into the net or over to the opponent.
Then there is another impressive discipline of setting, the one-handed set. This is not a decorative trick, but a skill that is often essential in the game. We first teach it using a basketball, somewhat like a shot toward the hoop, and then transfer the same movement to the volleyball. The goal is for children to understand from the beginning that every set must have a purpose, and that without a responsive wrist, it would only be a nice but ineffective attempt.
Episode 51 focused on setting errors, and there can be many when the legs do not work properly. The setter must get to the right place in time, stop there, and be stable and relatively calm before jumping. No slowing down in basic drills, they are exactly what teach proper footwork. If the legs fail, the second contact will fail as well. So what do we want to avoid? That the player runs past the ideal spot, or ruins the final movement with a long step that breaks balance. The beginning of the movement may be fast with long steps, but the end must consist of small corrective steps. After all, what is the use of speed if the setter overshoots the place where they need to set calmly?
In episode 54, we compared setting on sand and in the indoor game, and we see that indoor libero technique shares many similarities with beach volleyball. The player brings the ball lower during contact, in front of the face. A longer contact calms the set. What we often criticized in indoor play as a flaw in young setters would actually be acceptable on sand.
And now, the beach volleyball revolution brought by the Swedish players Achman and Helvig. It starts with an excellent reception, which is essentially the first attempt at a set. The second player then decides whether to attack or set again. The second requirement is deception. During the second contact, the player must fake the movement, pretending to set or attack and then doing the opposite. The Bulgarian Nikolov demonstrated this brilliantly at the World Championship.
Episode 81 reminded us of a simple truth. A setter needs not only technique, but also strong hands, fingers, and wrists that will respond reliably. They give the set strength, finesse, and disguise, and therefore must be carefully strengthened and kept flexible. That is why basketballs, medicine balls, and specific finger and wrist training have a permanent place in practice. In episodes 92 and 93, we showed how to train setting in any possible situation, whether the setter is alone in the gym or has 1, 2, or even 5 teammates available. Should they sit in the corner and wait for better conditions? Not at all. Setting can be trained in almost any situation. You just need to know how.
We have dedicated a total of 15 episodes to setting. That is quite a body of work, is it not? And what better way to conclude than by showing the mastery of two players who faced each other in the final of last year's World Championship, Nikolov and Gianelli. You can watch them in episodes 85, 86 and 94. However, the title belongs to Italy, so it is only fitting to close with a look at their setter and leader.